them together. And he replied, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and the great commandment. And the second is like unto it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Upon these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." What he did forever is give us a way to prioritize, to decide in our moral lives. And what Jesus accomplished by doing this is two things. The first of all, he forever fused together love for God with love for neighbor, so that it has become illegitimate now for us to talk about one without reference to the other. That's important. And the second thing that he did is he made a proper order between the two loves. He gave for us a proper order between the two loves. Love for God, which is worship, which is devotion, which is our pursuit of holiness, he set as primary. And love for our neighbor, which is Christian charity or service to the poor, flows out of and is derivative from love for God. In other words, Jesus himself established the principle that Catholic social teaching is founded upon and flows out from Catholic moral teaching. You might call this the order of charity, the order of charity, or the order of the two loves. Now, the proper ordering of the two loves is reflected in the Church's formulaic act of love. You might remember, those who are cradle Catholics, you might remember among all the prayers, the Catholic prayers that you were required to learn when you were in Sunday school, as a kid, you had to learn the act of faith, act of hope, and act of love. Who learned all these? Who learned these? Not that many. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're going to have to learn these. I'll tell you why it's important. Okay, the act of faith, the act of hope, and the act of love or charity are the three theological virtues. Okay, faith, hope, and love are the three theological virtues. Faith, hope, and love. They're called theological because they come from God. They're given to us. We don't generate faith. Faith is a gift. Hope and love are gifts, right? And they come to us by God's grace in baptism. The seed is planted of faith, of hope, and love in baptism. And I talked about that last week as we prepared for the baptism that we had last week. But the point is that we can nurture those seeds, and we're expected to nurture them, right? As we grow in faith, and holiness as Catholics, we're expected to nurture those faith, hope, and love, seeds of faith, hope, and love. And we do it, one of the tools that the church gives us are the acts of faith, hope, and love. Because when we recite them, when we recite the act of faith, the act of hope, and the act of love, we proclaim that we have faith, that we have hope, that we have love. And every time we proclaim it, we reinforce it in our spirit. And it's sort of like doing a spiritual push-up. So that's why they're called acts. And guess what? By proclaiming the act of faith and by proclaiming the act of hope and proclaiming the act of love every day as part of our morning prayers, we actually strengthen them in us and we increase them. We increase our faith, our hope, and our love. I'm just focusing on one of them today. And I just want to point out that the fact that we learn those as the prayers we learn as children, but yet they're so powerful and effective in reinforcing the theological virtues in our lives is part of the genius of Catholic tradition. But I want to get back to the order of charity. the order of the two loves, because I said the proper ordering is reflected in the act of love. So I want to read it to you now. The act of love. Oh my God, I love you above all things with my whole heart and soul, because you are all good and worthy of all my love. I love my neighbor as myself for the love of you. I forgive all who have injured me, and I ask pardon of all whom I have injured. That's the act of love. You remember that, right? Okay. Note, it tells us two things. It tells us why we love God, which is we love God because he's all good and worthy of all our love. And it tells us why we love our neighbor, which is because we love our neighbor for our love of God, right? And it's the same idea that's captured in 1 John 4:19. We love because he first loved us. See, that's authentic Catholic Christian charity. It's not an emotional thing. It's not a romantic thing or a Hallmark thing. It's a sacrificial love for one another. And at best, the church has always held these two concerns, love for God and love for neighbor, in balance, maintaining the proper order. But it's a delicate balance, and sometimes the church tilts too far one way, and sometimes people tilt too far one way, and sometimes people tilt too far the other way. Overemphasizing love for neighbor and neglecting devotional things, or vice versa, spending all your time doing devotional things and neglecting the acts of mercy, right? Now, in my opinion, a good example of within the modern Catholic Church of maintaining the proper order between Catholic moral teaching and Catholic social teaching can be found in St. Teresa of Calcutta's Missionaries of Charity, the Missionaries of Charity. As to love of neighbor, they are radical. They're fully committed, willing to give up everything to serve the poor. As to love of God, they're also fully committed and radical and very traditional. Their days always begin with Mass. Their days always end with Rosary. And one of the main criticisms of St. Teresa of Calcutta from political leftists and social justice warriors who otherwise applauded her work was the fact that St. Teresa of Calcutta was unapologetically anti-abortion and pro-life, because she understood that you cannot really love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself if you accept abortion, which kills a human soul created in the image of God. So the Missionaries of Charity are an example that embody the principle that love for neighbor flows out of love for God. So in conclusion, in the story today, the lawyer asks a very important question, even if he did it for the wrong reason. He said, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And in reply to the lawyer, Jesus pointed out the very important principle of his teaching, the great commandment. Love the Lord your God. First, love the Lord your God with all your heart, strength, and soul. Then love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. And this is called the great commandment. And with the great commandment, Jesus forever fused these two kinds of love together, so that it's illegitimate to talk about one without reference to the other. And he set the proper order. Holiness, love for God, devotion is primary, love for neighbor, Christian charity, service to the poor flows out of our love for God and is secondary. And this, we might say, is the order of Christian charity. And this is the lesson of the gospel reading today.